Yeah, hi, my name is Jihi. I'm going to be the chair for the EFL Grand Finals of 12th YTN House English Debating Championship. I'd like to congratulate both teams for making it this far. On government side, we have Team Sonder. On opposition, we have Team Imposter. And with me, I have my judges, my panel, Marina, Ryan, An, Hyunjun, Yongwoo, and Seokjin. Under the motion, assuming the tech exists, this house would get rid of depression. Before we begin, can I have the speaker orders for government, please? Team Sonder.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
The first speaker and the last speaker is Do So-yoon. The second speaker is Kwak Na-yoon. And the third speaker is Lee Tae-won.
Okay, thank you. For opposition, Imposter.
Our first speaker is Lee Jun-seo. Our second speaker is Jung Won-seo. Our third speaker is Jung Ye-eun. And our reply is Lee Jun-seo.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, without any further ado, let's begin. You're here.
My timer starts at 3, 2, 1. In current society, there are many people suffering from the depression. People get so much stress from their daily life, competing and cooperating, and especially certain jobs such as deliveries or politicians are stressed out of it. As a result, many of them suffer from illness that is source of them and even manage an extreme choice to suicide or hurt oneself. And we, the proposition, strongly believes that the illness is to be cured and never can benefit our citizens. Depression and depressed is different. Depressed feelings can be overcome in a short period, but depression, an illness that can be lasted in the long term, cannot be cured by oneself, and therefore we believe that as the feasibility is assumed, we the government need to interfere and help the citizens to recover their health and have happiness for their entire life. We will prove our burden that we should help to our goal is to help to make a better society, thus helps the individuals who are depressed. And we will have to prove this burden in 3 cases. Our first case is about the individual benefits, and the second is about the societal characteristics, and the third is about the role of the government as to manage the health and thus the feasible environments for the citizens. To define today's motion, today we're debating on the motion, this house would get rid of depression assuming that technology exists. To first define technology, technology means something that completely cures depression. And get rid of depression means to eliminate the illness defined as depression through technology. This does not mean that we are erasing the feeling of being depressed, but medically confirmed depressed of every age, and therefore their disease will be cured when we use these technologies. And now I'd like to move on to our team's first case. The first case of the government team is the negative individual effects of depression. And the first layer is about the individual characteristics of depression. What is depression? Depression is a disease that makes people to not have normal thoughts and make them to view everything very negatively. Maybe this is a disease that people can overcome, but the problem is that this is an illness that blocks people from every normal life. Therefore, it is very hard for them to overcome by only their willpower. For example, in a Wechsler intelligence test, intelligence decreases when people have high depression rates, which proves that people cannot think very intelligently, smartly, and normally when they are in depression. Thus, this proves that this is detrimental to individuals because they cannot live a normal life like others do. Therefore, it proves that they are blocked from thinking properly. People who are currently depressed do not feel any happiness. Others are happy. Other people who are not in depression are happy or only have depressed thoughts in minor cases. But those people simply do not get the opportunity to be happy. Isn't it moral to help those people to regain their happiness, regain their health, and live a better life? Isn't it needed to help these people as the government? We as the government strongly believe that because of these bad individual characteristics of depression, it is thus very needed for the government to interfere since they have the feasibility. If they are not sure about their technology, then they must not do it in the short term. However, they have the feasibility, and therefore it is right for them to help them since the individual characteristics is so bad. And the second layer of the first case is about the acceptance of society as an individual. What do citizens do in society? Citizens is independent features of society, but also has the duty to be contained inside the society, which means that citizens must be accepted to the societal group. However, people today have stereotypes of depression, believing that they can give up easily, and because of some crimes, they believe that they are potential criminals. and we are not satisfied with the current situation. Therefore, the solution is today's motion. Here, we are not saying that these stereotypes are true and depressed people have the problem. But since these stereotypes are formed already and those depressed people do not get the opportunity and thus harmed by these stereotypes, we believe that to truly help these people, we must enforce this motion and make them to get rid of depression so that they get rid of societal stereotype and finally do what they really want to do. And therefore, this motion is needed as it helps the acceptance of society as an individual. Now to move on to our government team's second case, the government team's second case addresses the social characteristics of depression. Our first layer is, how do we survive? The social mindset. Even though all people agree that human life is important and dignity must be protected, the social standard of people is that they have to be strong and have healthy mindset. They expect people to have the characteristics to have a role in society. Without this, they neglect them. Therefore, we are not saying that this is right, but the problem is that this exists like we proved in the first case. And even without this standard, still, the natural theorem is that we need to be competitive and enthusiastic to live well, to survive. And this is not talking about success, but to survive and have to the basic life, while depressed people lack this ability and therefore they are not feasible to normal life. And we believe that in order to enable them to survive, they must get rid of their disease, and it is right to help them since it helps the societal characteristics of the people. And the second layer talks about that it is the only method to save people from depression. Most depressions start from sufferings of society. The stress from work or school or family make the people to feel depression. For example, celebrities get hurt by bad comments and politicians get hurt by failures of policy. And if this persists and it becomes depression and they feel suffering for a very long time. However, these people standing right in their place is important. Even though they are not in an important place in the society, keeping their stance and role is important for society. However, people cannot do much things to stop this disease. They cannot help them to solve their concerns. They cannot give money. We cannot give them those things. And therefore, the government cannot solve the cause that causes depression. We must eliminate the consequence, which is depression. And therefore, even though there are causes inside the society that makes people to have depression, still, after it happens, the consequences is eliminated, which means that they will have better life inside the society. And thus, we believe that this motion should stand since it helps people to have better characteristics and also it benefits society. Thus, it helps the overall nation to grow. I'm proud to propose this motion.
I thank the Prime Minister for their speech. The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I'd like to invite the next speaker, the Leader of Opposition. You're here.
Am I audible? My time starts in 3, 2, 1. So, Mr. Speaker, they said that depression could not be cured. The government said that. However, we challenged the definition that depression can naturally disappear with success, Mr. Speaker. We believe that depression is not a thing that we could not cure, but we challenged it, and we believe that depression can naturally disappear and can naturally be cured with success, Mr. Speaker. So, before moving on to these two great arguments and some rebuttals, I would like to first give some before our team's clarification, I would like to rebut the previous speaker's arguments. So the previous speaker's first argument was negative individual. So she said that it is never detrimental for those individual, and those individual cannot live a normal life. However, Mr. Speaker, we believe that actually in the first place it is assumption that their logic is under the assumption that people will only feel happiness in their side, Mr. Speaker. This is assumption and actually wrong. They never proved it. And actually in our side, we could actually achieve also happiness with depression, Mr. Speaker. And it is immoral for the government to get rid of depression at all, because it might give some harms to the individual. Get rid of a whole one emotion, which is depression, is erasing it at all without permission of the individual could not be justified. We could have another alternative solution, such as curing those individual mentally, medically, to get out from this depression, Mr. Speaker. In our side, actually by figuring depression and having depression in our society, we could lead to more happiness, and I furthermore prove it in my second argument. And there's Their second argument was about exclusive. So they talked about it is an exclusive way to actually get rid of those depression. It's an exclusive way to achieve happiness and like to help those individual. However, Mr. Speaker, we believe this is not exclusive but extreme, Mr. Speaker. Getting rid of one emotion without any even permission of this individual is so extreme. We could have other ways. And also, actually, depression is, we believe that depression is not just only negative and it could only harm those individuals, but actually could benefit the individual. And also, it is needed emotion for this individual and a human being, Mr. Speaker. So before moving on to our team's arguments, I'd like to first give some clarification in this debate. At the end of the day, both sides, our main goal is to achieve maximum happiness. We believe that emotions are connected because some emotion exists, so some emotion can be valuable because those emotions exist. The reason why happiness exists is because there are diverse feelings that makes the happiness valuable. We believe that depression is also needed and beneficial, and happiness and depression is relative, Mr. Speaker. We believe that happiness and depression is not only defined and could not be changed, but most we believe that happiness and depression is relative by individuals and by their situation, Mr. Speaker. So moving on to two arguments. Arthur's first argument is it is immoral. This house, the government is getting rid of depression, one emotion, without getting any permission from others and any permission from those individuals who are getting rid of their emotion. We believe that it is immoral to get rid of depression, which is an emotion that we should also feel. For example, you fought with your friend or lover or family. If you can't feel any depression, but only feel happiness or normal emotions, but cannot feel anything, just feeling normal emotion, because the government get rid of your emotion depression, is it normal and like a human being, and is it justified for the government to do that? Because you feel depression, you regret and recognize that I should not fight again with others. And we believe that actually depression is also needed, and it is actually immoral and unjustified for the government to get rid of this depression at all, and it's too extreme, Mr. Speaker. We believe that just because the emotion could bring some negative effect, destroying it and erasing it at all from all those individuals is immoral and taking the citizens' right to feel. Human being is human being because they have emotion, Mr. Speaker, because they feel emotion, Mr. Speaker, because they know diverse emotion. Depression is also needed, and citizens has the right to feel depression, which is one kind of emotion the human being could feel, and they have a right to feel, Mr. Speaker. We believe that depression is not negative at all. It's only negative, has caused only negative effects, but actually it is somewhat beneficial and actually needed, and it is moral to have to let those individuals to even feel depression, Mr. Speaker. We believe that getting rid of it is too extreme and immoral. I think the second argument is achieve happiness. We have two main subpoints in this argument. The first subpoint is maximize amount of happiness. Because you felt depression, you can feel even more happiness in the end. For example, Team Imposter lost 2 rounds at the prelim and felt depression, but they came up to the final, so they were even more happy rather than the situation that they win for all 4 rounds in the prelim, Mr. Speaker. Happiness is relative. Because you failed once and felt depression, if you succeed next time, you can feel more happy, and this actually cures the depression and actually makes you even more happy than the government side where they don't have depression at all. Side opposition is the side that achieve actually more happiness than the government side that only doesn't have depression, that makes happiness valuable and makes happiness more happy. And also we believe that without no depression, there's no happiness. If there is no depression, there are no happiness. Happiness is relative. You can't define what happiness is. When there is no depression, happiness will not be happiness, but will be just a normal feeling because you didn't know what failure and depression is. You cannot also think happiness as happiness when you don't have depression and when you cannot feel depression in the government side. Because happiness is relative to depression and could feel when you achieve or did something after feeling depression, enduring depression and failure, Mr. Speaker. We believe that under the government side, the world changes. Happiness is not happiness in their side, but happiness actually becomes a happiness when they don't have depression, Mr. Speaker. We believe that happiness is relative because you have depression and because you know what failure is and because you know what depression feels like. When you could also know what happiness is and could define happiness, Mr. Speaker. We believe that, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we believe that actually it is immoral to get rid of depression and too extreme. And also we believe that actually we achieve happiness when you have those depression. Because happiness is relative, we could achieve more happiness by feeling depression. And because there's depression, there are also happiness, Mr. Speaker. So I'm proud to oppose.
thank the Leader of Opposition for their speech. The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 23 seconds. To continue the case for government, I would like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister. You're here.
Ma'am, am I audible right now?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, before anything, we would like to accept the challenge of the definition, but our motion definition, we are trying to cure the depression of an illness rather than a feeling that couldn't be cured by even with one's will. We are saying that this illness of depression, that there is a possibility of it not being cured. We want to cure that through today's motion and thus creating the ultimate happiness of society today. For that, we believe that today's motion, our side is much more superior. Side opposition burden was to prove that today's motion is not needed when discussing the idea of a depression as an illness. Yet they claim a blind case by discussing depression as an emotion. In our definition and information slide for clarification, it was talking about that the getting rid of depression does not mean that we're erasing the feeling of being depressed, but being medically confirmed that you're having an illness as a depression. Thus, meaning that their idea about erasing emotion as a depression, their idea does not have any clause because we have already given you the definition that depression is an illness. If we believe that emotion of a depression can exist, and we completely agree that it brings happiness. Thus, by their claim, we believe that their claim is true. However, as we are talking about depression as illness, their claim does not hold any ground in today's debate. Before anything, allow me to rebut their claims. They're talking about getting rid of emotion and it's not justified. And their first idea was about how it is immoral to agree to getting emotion deleted. Again, they're getting the wrong understanding of the motion. The definition was about the illness. There's a clear difference between depression as an illness and depression as a feeling. You may be depressed as a feeling by saying that, oh my God, I lost in a game. Sure, you can be depressed, but you have happiness after that. However, depression as an illness, depression completely owns your choice of action, your thoughts, your words. It creates depression in every single action that you take. It is different from depression as a feeling, as it is just a simple feeling that comes and goes. This illness does not come and go. It stays still, and even though if one was to cure it by their own will, there's a possibility of it still being in one's mind. Thus, if there's a case of it still being in the mind, the motion is what cure we suggest, and thus we believe that their claim does not hold any ground. Their second case was about maximizing happiness, and one can be happy through depression. Two responses here. We do agree, but the depression we're talking about again is the illness which negatively shapes your thoughts, actions, and words. From that, we believe that one can be happy to depression. Yes, that is completely true. We were sad, but we can be happy after that. We completely agree with that, but illness does not do that. So meaning that their idea about maximizing happiness is true, but not a place in today's debates. Secondly, we agree that feeling depressed brings bigger happiness, but not simply, even if an illness was to have a possibility of happiness, there is a bigger amount of negativity than the positive effects in your mind, meaning that an illness means that the negative mind is bigger. This shows the fact that even though one was happy, the negative effects of the body is overwhelming, and which thus, as the info slide is saying, affects your thoughts and minds and your words. Thus, meaning that their claims about being happy, no matter if a depression of an illness or an emotion was to have happiness in a possible situation, their claim does not make any sense. Even if people are going to the wrong way, the government needs to stop them. And for us to stop them is after being depressed, we must choose today's motion. We believe that we are a possibility of creating this depression in the first place because we have created the wrong environment that created them to be have an illness. So we as a government want to compensate for being a part of the cause of depression and propose today's motion as a solution for the depression and for their bad feelings as an illness. The last case that we're going to bring it to is about the role of the government when dealing with depression and how is our duty when it comes to the issue of an illness. Ladies and gentlemen, we have illustrated for you, depression is defined as an illness of the mind, thus implying the fact that since an illness is to be cured, we must take today's motion to help people escape their illness and from their pain. What is an illness, you may question? An illness is something that creates pain in the body or the mind that needs to be completely cured for the better future. If we let an illness be, all it does is create and leave the patient severely ill and in pain. What does that do? It is just a negative effect. We as a government should take the possible technology to help them out. When since the fact that these people are sick, who will say no when someone offers to you to get you out of your pain that you're currently living in? A government's duty is to protect citizens from being hurt, and like the reason of the creation of the vaccine. What sort of government ignores the chance to help their citizens? We as a responsible government will grab their chance. Furthermore, it is our duty and responsibility to keep our citizens in a proper mentality to live in society. For the fact that it was us who kept these people in a bad environment. The origin of their depression was possibly us because we created a wrong environment. Thus, to compensate and to give them a chance to recover, we must choose today's motion. As we were the villain in the first place, we must do something to compensate for the pain that they were living in because we are the origin of that. Thus, because we accept the fact that we have created the depression that these people are creating as an illness, we must do to cure them and to get them out of the pain that they are in. Thus, we suggest today's motion. The government must create a positive society as a stage for us citizens for the brightest future. What future do you have when you think negatively? By thinking positively, you get a better positive future. If you think negatively, you get the negative future. What do you choose? The negative future or the positive? We believe that you will choose the positive, and thus, for the positive future, we suggest today's motion, and thus we are so proud to propose.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for their speech. The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 16 seconds. I'd like to invite the next speaker, the Deputy Leader of Opposition, to continue the case for opposition. Hear, hear.
Am I audible? My time starts in 3, 2, 1. We think that depression, we accept the definition that depression is an illness. But the problem is that we think that emotions and illnesses in itself corely are not that different from each other. Why is this so? We think that the main characteristic of many illnesses, the majority of illnesses, it naturally cures after time passes, right? For example, the flu. The flu is a kind of illness that most people get and the majority of people get, right? But we think that after time passes, the flu naturally cures after time, right? We think that emotions, depressions, this is all the same like this. We think that even if it's not, it is an illness, we think that it has the same characteristics as emotions and as the depression meaning itself. So therefore, what we said is true. We think that depression also is a factor that can naturally evade after time passes, same to illnesses. When someone of your family dies and after time passes, you first think that that's so sad, but after time passes, you naturally come back to your normal lives and forget that person after tons of years, right? And just live your normal life. Thus, our burden is not to prove why depression is only good, rather why does it have more benefits than harms, which I will explain in my third argument. The reason why side government loses this debate is because they did not prove why the problem of illnesses weighs enough to get rid of emotions, human rights to feel for yourself, for everyone. Just the government does not have the right to intervene in your human rights. Even if that right could harm yourself in the future or in the current status quo, we think that the government does not have the right to intervene your human right to feel, and we think that feeling emotions is the most important thing. And even if it is an illnesses, we think that because it also works as an emotion and similar characteristics, we think that depression is not a thing that the government can just take away from the citizens. We think that happiness, depression, illnesses, and all emotions that exist are not contrary ideas, rather exist as a spectrum of one emotion or illness. We think that both sides' goal is to achieve maximum happiness of maximum people, right? Our leader of opposition told you that happiness cannot exist without depression because one, emotions are comparative, and second, it's happiness becomes less valuable. We think that this makes human beings. We think that what makes human beings humane is real emotion. Let's look at the novel The Giver, a world same as us, with us, but except one, emotion. How is that world like? Well, if we draw a picture of it, a dystopian world where nobody knows the real truth of the world. Side government wants to change our society, each one of us, and even our honorable adjudicators one by one, to lose our emotion to become a dystopia.
we think that this depression is a factor that people should have on their core lives themselves. The depression is also an important thing that makes happiness also, like our leader of opposition told you. Even if it is an illness, we think that depression as an illness also helps you to make happiness in the future, because like we told you, even if it's an illness, it can be cured after time. Then this means that even if you're depressed right now, if you win away that depression and get happiness at the end of the day, we think that happiness will be the most valuable happiness in your lives, because you won over that illness and you got the happiness. This means that in comparison to just having happiness all the time and not feeling that much, we think that this gives you maximum happiness of what the side government cannot achieve in today's debate. If you're happy all the time or do not feel depression all the time, in comparative to our side, we think that side government will not feel happiness less, which is against our goal of this motion on both sides. We think that the problem of suicide, those kind of things aren't exclusive as well, because like we told you, failure, happiness, depression, all these kind of things are all connected on a certain spectrum. We think that they are not contrary terms. We think that by this, if you erase depression, there's a high chance that happiness will also be erased, because if there's no depression, you cannot feel happiness on a contrary level. And we think that by this, suicide rates are not exclusive only on our side. Even if that's true, we think that it also happens on side government as well. So what is our third argument, Madam Speaker? Our third argument is that people can learn from emotion and learn from depression. Depression is valuable in itself and does more good than harm. Little Timmy fails his test and gets scolded by his mother. He gets so much stress, but after he gets rid of depression, he doesn't feel any bad, and also fails his next test as well, because he doesn't learn anything and doesn't try hard enough, because he's just happy, he's not sad. We think that he grows up to be a dumb person. This is a society where side government wants in this debate. We think that emotions make you not only mentally grown, but also intellectually grown as well. And we think that emotion and depression itself is a very valuable thing that could help you in diverse ways. We think that just because it helps you right in the short term does not mean that you need to lose all the benefits of emotions, all the benefits of intellectual benefits, mental benefits that make you grown into adult. We think that all those benefits, real adult, we think that all those benefits, just giving up them just because of your short-term depression right now, we think that is not justified. That is even going to be a harm for these kinds of individuals. And we think that when it becomes a harm for individuals, the government doesn't have a duty to take out something that could be a harm, take out something, and if that action could be a harm, taking out that action could be a harm to the individuals. We think that this is morally unjustified. You learn what is right or wrong. You also learn to feel sympathy for other people. You work harder next time. All those benefits that one side opposition wants to dump up in this debate. And we think that these are the exclusive benefits that depression, emotion, all those kinds of connected things can bring together with the harmony. We think that for these reasons, we're very proud to oppose today's debate. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for their speech. The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 16 seconds. I'd like to invite the next speaker, the government whip. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon, Your Honorable Judicator and fellow members of Parliament. My name is Deon Lee, and I'm the whip of the opposition of government side, and I will start discussing about the three clashes our team found in today's speech. So firstly, we will discuss about the definition and definition challenge caused in today's debate. So the option has challenged our team's definition, saying that depression can naturally be cured by one's challenge, which means that opposition is seeing cure process of definition as one challenging or not. Through this, it is proved that how the opposition is overlooking how patients feel and just seeing patients who are not cured as ones who don't try to challenge, and ones who act negatively just because of their immediate feeling having weak ego. And we believe that emotion being depressed and the term depression as the disease is so different.
So if, for example, emotion depressed goes and comes every day and every night. So there is several reasons of one person becoming depressed or not in emotion. So if someone win a game, that person will be happy. And if someone loses the game, that person might be depressed. But we believe that it is very in short term and impermanent. However, about the disease depression, the one can feel that depressed emotion in the whole life before they are cured. And we believe that option is neglecting one severe disease, killing one's spirit and ego just because they are not those patients. Now I will move on to Artist's first question. So firstly, how will society be affected? So surviving in society gives huge stress to our society members. Every day is full of competition and survival. People need to make visible results to prove and justify their existence to the entire society. And it is so natural for those citizens to feel depressed in some days. And some of them can be ill because of those depressed emotions, continuous and huge amount of stress. Especially celebrities or politicians getting millions of comments not filtered, killing their inside ego, or suffering so much. There are 1 person per year killing themselves in the celebrities or politicians because of that illness, depression. And what they see and feel is not a feeling of depressed, but the illness, depression. Anyone can feel depressed in some days because of several reasons. And feeling depressed one day don't just mean one person's being ill of it. Opportunists think that people can feel true happiness when people know that depressed feeling. However, the opportunist is overlooking how those who are suffering from the depression is feeling. And even it is proved that depression damages one's ability than one is in normal state of health. So people living in their social lives are getting in depression of their social lives. And we believe that it is definitely needed to be cured. And just living social life of one's life should not never kill one's spirit. Now I will move on to our second question. So secondly, how will individuals be affected? Currently, there are many members of society suffering from depression, and we, the proposition, strongly believe that those people in depression should live a normal, happy life when the chance to live is only provided once. When one suffers from depression, their thoughts and actions are dominated by the depressed feeling. And why not use technology to help them live happier and more positive life? Individuals with depression cannot feel how their life is so beautiful, and if severe, some of them just spend their life locked up in hospital on the back. Furthermore, there even are stereotypes existing which make the wrong habit, tending to not accept people with depression in our society. So they neglect the ability of depression patients and avoid interacting with those. Some people even see depression patients as potential criminals. Is it right? No, definitely isn't. However, it is not able to visit each citizen and change their thought, which is believed right for a long time in their life. So the patients usually have a hard time to make healthy relationship with other members of our society. By this really proposition proved that the depression is giving tremendous negative effect to one's life. It will be better if one can easily overcome depression. However, the reality shows that it is actually not. Therefore, the government should help them to live a better, happier life for those individuals. Now I will move on to our team's last clash. So lastly, what is the role of the government? Before discussing about this clash, we want to make one thing clear, that it is the government's duty to save people from disease. Government shouldn't make people suffer in pains of illness, but so much people are actually suffering in current society decline. So curing is so essential and necessary. For example, making vaccine for physical disease to people just like current days. And furthermore, if people are suffering from the disease which is caused by their social life, which is administered by the government has the responsibility to cure it. Ones who need to keep citizens in proper condition and mentality. Government is trying to recover and restore citizens' mentality because we are the responsible government being a proposition of this debate. And opposition team must keep on mentioning their decline. Opposition team must keep on mentioning that we should get permission from the patients who are in the pain. But we believe that no one is wanting to keep them in the pain. Though they can stay out or though they can request to the government, but they want hand of safe to get out of their depression. And we believe that we, the proposition and opposition, is having same goal to make citizens to be in the better mental state. But opposition is neither helping patient nor helping society. So we believe that opposition can never stand on the forefront of the motion. Then I yield the rest of my from to the floor. Thank you.
I thank the government for their speech. The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 28 seconds. I'd like to invite the next speaker, the opposition, with here.
Okay, so my time starts in 3, 2, 1. I think that the government side is giving us an unfair burden in order to prove how they also have these kind of emotion, and they also have they're just curing this kind of illness. But we have two main response. Firstly, we think that, like our deputy leader of opposition proved, we think that it is going to be cured because the majority of illness is going to be cured. Even if it is not going to be cured, we think that it is an assumption made from the government side that it is never going to be cured. We think that this is an assumption. But even without this point, we think that illness and these kind of feeling is not that different. Why is this so? Because if bunch of depression is combined, then it leads to depression that is in illness. Because you feel depression in so much time, and because you feel depression constantly, we think that that is exactly why you have depression in the illness. We see that we don't see why depression as an emotion and depression as a feeling is that illness and feeling is not that much different, because we think that it is the pretty same logic in this kind of sense. I'm going to present two main clashes of today's debate. First clash, who gives maximum happiness? We think that most Thai school is pretty clear on giving maximum happiness. I have four main points. One, can they achieve happiness in their side? We think no, because why can't they achieve happiness? It is because in their world, happiness becomes a normal thing in their kind of perspective. Because they're never having depression, and because happiness is going to be their normal state, and because in their normal state, they're always going to feel happiness without depression. For example, if rich people, their standard is being very rich. So we think that they will feel very angry, or they will feel bad if they're they're treated as normal people rather than rich people. We think this is the same, because if you're happy and that is your normal state, if you're so bad and you can't, if you have so much depression, you can have happiness. But in their side, because they only have happiness as a normal state, we think that they can never achieve happiness at the end of the day, and they can never feel happy. That is real happiness in their perspective, because their happiness is normal in that kind of sense. So therefore, we think that they can't achieve happiness in their side since it is a normal state. Secondly, can you have happiness in our side? We obviously think that we can have happiness in our side because we have diverse feeling. We think that feeling and emotion is very relative, and also we already proved how this kind of depression as an illness is also the emotion being combined. We think that that is exactly why we can achieve happiness in their side, even if the definition of depression is feeling, or even if the definition of depression is illness. We think that because they're going to be depressed, and if they have some kind of goal that they achieve, we think that that is exactly why when they're going to be happy, because it is relative. If we don't have depression, and even if we had a good thing, and even if we achieved our goal, because you're happy in the past and also in the present, we think that you're not going to be able to be happy on their side, but rather in our side, because you feel depression, and it is very relative. And also they give an example about celebrity and about politician. We think the reason why they're committing suicide and the reason why they're having so much depression is because they got so much compliment, or they got so much like good things in the past. This is why if they get a little bad comments, they're going to be very pressured and they feel very bad. This is the same thing as this kind of emotion. We believe that the reason why celebrity and politicians are committing suicide, or other people are committing suicide, is because they can't achieve happiness and they can't feel happiness, since they never feel how they're going to be depressed in so bad way. We think that their normal stance is happiness, and that is why they're on their side. In our side, it is their benefit is not exclusive. Thirdly, in the long term, we think that in the long term, they can never achieve something called development. Why is this true? Because you always have happiness and you never have incentive to do what you want and achieve what you want. You're just anyways happy. There's no incentive to be more happy and more happy because you're always happy. We think that you're never going to develop and you're never going to have any incentive to develop and make yourself better. We think that in the long term, it is going to be bad for individual and it is going to decrease the happiness itself. But last point about exclusivity, even if they can achieve same feeling, and even if their side their side has exclusive benefits, and even if their side has the same benefit with us with maximum happiness. If we just prove that our side is only the side that have exclusive benefits, then we think we win this debate. So directly move on to our second question about justification. We think that this is pretty exclusive in today's debate because the government is not violating people's rights. We think if the government erases the depression that could give you very benefit, then just because you're stressed in the short term, that is immoral without consent of individual, because you never get consent of individual itself. But government never mechanized that you will give them a choice. We think that this is pretty clear that we have this kind of exclusive benefits called justification, and it is the government don't have the right, according to harm principle, it is just violating human right, and it is violating the right to be human as a human and feel the feeling. So therefore, we think that because you already proved how depression as a feeling and depression as a illness is not that different in this kind of sense, and they never engaged in our kind of world, but we did in their world, and so they never engaged in our world, but we did engage in their world also. In the worst case, that is why we're so proud.
I think the opposition went for their speech. The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. To wrap up the case for opposition, I'd like to invite the opposition reply. You're here.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, my time starts in 3, 2, 1. Governments keep talking and hanging with the definition, so they fail to properly engage to our whole point. They keep tackling to the point that depression is not illness that could not be cured, and only debated under the size definition, which is unfair. But they still prove why we won this debate, even under the definition. Also, government is leaving this debate so extreme, defining and assuming that depression will harm the individual until they cannot do anything, even cannot try to find happiness. This debate was messy because of government's unfair burden, unfair definition, and government only engaged to our point with the definition and having huge assumption with their stance, Mr. Speaker. So we believe that there were two main issues on this debate. The first main issue was about justification, and the second main issue was about who leads to happiness. So about the first main issue, government pointed out that it is moral to save the individual from depression by get rid of it, and then we pointed out that it is immoral to get rid of depression at all, and erasing the emotional feeling and all is immoral because depression is also needed and beneficial. We prove you why depression is needed and also beneficial. We prove you why government should not take the citizens' right to feel, because government think depression can harm individuals. Depression can harm individuals. They are taking those individuals a right to feel without their permission is immoral, and we proved it and we talked about it. Gov didn't properly prove why it is justified to take depression from everyone, even without their permission. Government action is unjustified. And about the second issue about who leads to happiness, both sides' goal was to prove which side leads to happiness. This is a real goal, but because of the government's unfair burden and unfair definition, the debate got messy. The government pointed out that without depression, we could only have happiness, and it would lead to happiness, and depression could not be cured, which is the unfair definition. But we pointed out that because we have depression, we have happiness, and by depression, we can have more happiness. We proved you why without depression there's no happiness, and we pointed out that happiness is relative. Because there's the depression, there's happiness, the emotion called happiness, Mr. Speaker. We proved you why depression cannot be cured. We proved you why the definition can be cured. And we proved why the assumption that the government made assumption about the definition that those depression cannot be cured, Mr. Speaker. Go focus too much about our definition and our definition challenge, not focusing about happiness that they should have, which is the main goal, and the main goal that we should prioritize in this debate, Mr. Speaker. But we didn't only hang out about those definition things, but we actually proved you why we achieve happiness, which is the main goal of this debate, even under their unfair definition. Under the Gov rule, there's a right to feel or is taken, and there will be no happiness existing, which is a dystopia. But in our world, citizens' right to feel is protected, and happiness exists, and we actually achieve more happiness than the government side. So we take this debate today home.
I think the opposition replied for their speech. The speaker spoke for 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Lastly, the final member of this debate, the government replied. You're here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
My timer starts at 3, 2, 1. We debunk the opposition and agree to the point that government should strive to help depressed people, and we say that we want better situation for their people. So the question we raise in today's debate is, 1, what is better for the people who are suffering from depression? We would like to point out that depression does not equal depressed feelings. Of course, depressed feeling can lead to depression. However, the opposite does not stand. Depression cannot be changed to depressed feelings and gradually happiness because it is illness. Therefore, this proves that suffering must not be thought as a gradual step that leads to more happiness, since the suffering is immense. Thus, since the government is feasible to cure people perfectly over depression, there's no need for not doing. Even playing the opposition game and saying that, like the ALO, saying that suffering currently means future happiness. However, there's a problem since the amount of suffering today is equal to future happiness. Therefore, it has no benefits when it's multiplied together. This is 0, and therefore there's no benefit of doing. Furthermore, the opposition had argued that depression can naturally evade, giving the example of family's death. And to respond to this, 1, depression is illness and natural elimination is almost impossible. Even if we play the opposition game and say that depression can naturally evade, since everyone is different, there are still minorities that cannot cure by themselves for in extreme situations. And therefore, since the government has the feasibility, they must enforce this motion to not enable the slightest possibility to take turn and appear. The opposition had also talked about the permission. We would like to say about the citizens' permission in 2 ways. The first response is the government does not need permission of those people because they are leading the citizens the right way. And this is overall benefiting the human rights because they are benefiting their life, they're benefiting their health, which means that it is better for them. And furthermore, it is their duty to stop the citizens when they're in extreme situations. And the second response here is that most people will be positive about this mental cureness. For example, there are vaccines. People want to get vaccines because they know that it enhances their health. And this goes same with mental cure because they can perfectly cure their depression with this motion. Thus, we believe that eliminating happiness with depression is not so bad since it is going back to normal. Therefore, it is still better than being depressed forever, where they cannot cure themselves. So I would like to introduce the best case and the worst case of the government and the opposition. The best case scenario opposition suggested is the idea that depression cleans up by themselves both as an emotion as an illness. Let's take their claim and play it out. 1, as an emotion as the claim comes and goes. Depression as an emotion is a short-term thing. Thus, you being happy implies you being depressed gone. It's not only depressed people that feel sadness. It's undiagnosed people that feels negative and sad as well. Thus, their idea to oppose holds no ground since the premise of the debate is depression as an illness. 2, as an illness, why is illness an illness? It is because they are in immense pain. This implies that the negative mind is bigger when depressed. And meaning even you're happy, there's for a short time, a short happiness and a long depression. Thus, we as the government should help them. However, the worst case scenario that was assumed by the opposition side of their house is the fact that we are eliminating happiness. However, eliminating an illness does not mean you are happy. An illness as a pain of the body and mind. And at least if you're free from the massive sadness and depression, wouldn't that be better? It is an illness that we are talking about. Thus, even though the worst case of emotion, our stance is superior. Thus, today's motion must stand, and I yield the rest of my time to the floor. Thank you.
I thank the government reply for their speech. Thank you all debaters. That was an excellent round. Judges, please join me in the discussion room. Debaters, you can have a rest. Your round is over, and we're going to be back with the results during the closing ceremony.